This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show, all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest business story of the week, the most remarkable business story. We try and pick out a sleeper story, one that's flying under the radar a little bit, and then our favourite business stories. And since it's a competition, we are joined each week by a judge to pick a winner. That judge is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, Sean.
Morning, Adam. I think after a few rough weeks there, you've come to the fore the past couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Judging has improved enormously. Just want to let you know that.
All feedback welcome.
Well, let's see how you go today. What are the criteria that you're looking for, Adam? As we go through those four categories that I've outlined,
Yes.
what are you judging us on?
All right. Me and the audience, I think, are looking for topicality, timeliness, economic impact, subjective bias, obviously, of each of us, and melodrama.
Is that a swimsuit component?
There is none yet. I'm open to suggestion.
A swimsuit component.
Yeah, it's just like Miss Universe or any one of those kind of pageants.
Okay. This is an audio mechanism, but
Yes.
don't let that stand in the way.
Suddenly when it's just the three of us in the studio and two of us are in our budgies, it just gets a little bit uncomfortable, and Adam is there having to judge us. What exactly are you judging on, Adam?
This has gone pear-shaped very, very quickly this morning.
Let's go straight into the biggest story then, shall we, Sean?
Yes.
What was it for you?
Well, it's not that often that an international story is the biggest of the week, but just occasionally it is. And this is one of those weeks. The US political and legal system is easily the biggest story of the week. Part one, what's happening to the candidacy of President Joe Biden? After last week's disastrous debate with challenger Donald Trump, his performance was so poor, there's now a growing line of Democrats, from federal politicians to state governors, hinting or outright saying he shouldn't run. The polls are heading in the wrong direction for Mr. Biden, with his age being the biggest challenge. Media reports, which have been denied, suggest the president himself actually considered the idea of not running. Part two of this story, the US Supreme Court ruled that presidents and ex-presidents cannot be charged for things they do as part of their core duties. The 6-3 decision was made along ideological lines, with the minority Liberal judges releasing an absolutely ferocious alternate judgment. The decision says presidents or ex-presidents are, and I quote, entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts, end quote. I like the fact that it's a male there too. They say his official acts. The minority decision says the ruling makes a mockery of the principle that no man is above the law. Trump quickly took to social media saying, in capital letters of course, big win for our Constitution and democracy, proud to be an American. President Joe Biden said the decision is an abandonment of a core principle of American democracy and will allow Donald Trump self-defining power if he's elected in November. He said Donald Trump will now be free to ignore the law. The Supreme Court decision, along with Joe Biden's ailing fortunes, have somewhat rallied Democrats who fear a Donald Trump presidency. Now, it isn't totally clear if Joe Biden will run this year. I mean, I think it's very likely he will. It is definitely clear that under the Supreme Court ruling, the president of the USA, whoever that person is incredibly powerful, and when undertaking official acts, is pretty close to being immune from the law. This week has massive ramifications: political, geopolitical, economic, social, legal, around the world for decades to come, not just in the US, but around the world. Much bigger than Roe v. Wade. I'd just like to throw that one in there for Adam. Much bigger. Huge week in US politics. Michael.
Did you see all the reports that were coming out? I mean, they've been coming out the whole time. Then a lot of kind of sources close to Joe Biden talking about kind of the limits on what he is physically capable of doing, and the fact that they said that he's only really able to function effectively between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And that if he attends official kind of things or fundraisers, etc., outside of those hours, you are much, much more likely to get these gaffes and things coming up. And then apparently he told a room full of governors that he needs to get more sleep, and then he can't do functions after 8 o'clock at night, and all of this, and just all of these kind of things
worse.
are just. It just keeps kind of adding to that momentum against him. So anyway, it is a big story, Sean.
Biggest story, I think, Michael, is the way and you've added to it.
It's a big. I added to it. So Adam, if he does win, we now share the points.
Don't concede so early.
I'm not conceding. I am hedging my bets. It's called insurance. If Sean wins, I get half the points. If I win, he gets none. I have a goal this week. I've got a bit of a goal, a change of strategy. I'm going to win with short stories this week. Victory through brevity is my new slogan.
Okay.
Or in Latin, Victoria per brevitatem.
Breva what?
Brevitatem.
Is that like a ham and cheese toasty?
Yeah, it does sound like that, doesn't it? And already it feels as though you were robbing me of my ability to kind of stick to my new slogan.
Brevitatem.
So Sean can waffle on all he wants about stories happening on the other side of the world with very limited impact on us, whereas I can tell you that the big story this week that actually has a material impact on you and me and the everyday Rick and Connie in the street
Connie?
Yeah.
How did you get Rick and Connie? What's wrong with Bill and Jane?
No, well, every Connie deserves her day.
As does Rick. Rick.
Exactly. I just thought I'd change it up.
With a silent P.
Don't you ever just say the first thing that comes into your head sometimes?
Clearly not.
Yes.
Brevity. Was it brevitatem or something?
Yes, Victoria per brevitatem. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Anyway, what is actually affecting Rick and Connie and Steve and Billy Joe in the street is what's happened with house prices over the last year, because it was, of course, the start of the new financial year. Time for reflection over what was a truly extraordinary year in the Australian property market and is likely to be an extraordinary year ahead. A couple of the stats for you, Adam. I know that you love stats. I'm not going to go into too much detail because Victoria per brevitatem, all that kind of thing. Yes, Perth house prices up nearly 24% in 1 year. 24%. You ask any of our Perth listeners what they care about more, Donald Trump or a 24% increase in house prices, and I can assure you it is not the Don. Brisbane up 16%, Adelaide 15%, Sydney 6%, Darwin, Canberra 2%, Melbourne 1.3%. These core logic figures are hugely significant. They matter big time because even though interest rates are at their highest level in years, property just keeps on going. And
Adam, do you ever think that, like, the faster Michael talks, the louder he talks, the less value there is in the story?
Well, that is a very high risk. I'm also wondering about the brevitatem bit.
Yeah.
Well, I'm nearly done. If you stopped interrupting, you would allow my brevitatem to
prevail.
Prevail.
Yes, exactly. Good news for renters as well, with the Domain quarterly rent report this week showing the lowest growth in house rents for 3 or 4 years for many capital cities. That is spectacularly good news in the midst of a rental crisis. And the forecast for the rest of the year, easing pressure because we're past the peak of the immigration boom, reducing demand for properties. It has been a monster week for property in this country, for house prices and for rents. This is the story of the people from the man of the people. That's it. Done. All in about 20 seconds. You added on about 3.5 minutes because of your interruptions.
Okay. It's a lovely experiment in brevitatem. Might need a little more work. Sean wins.
Michael, don't look like that. You knew you had no chance. That's why you were carrying on so much.
That's why I get half your points. I'm not worried. This is a fabulous victory for us, Sean.
So house prices and rent is hugely important. Mm-hmm. It's more of an evolving story. This isn't shocking change in the trajectory that we know. So there's so much work that needs to be done. It's vitally important, as you say, Michael. This week, though, I have to say that the political and legal stories out of the US, it's just extraordinary. And it is definitely the biggest story of the week. So well done, Sean.
I think that all my badgering about Roe v. Wade over the last couple of years has come finally paid some dividends.
Yeah, but it won't wipe it out, though, will it?
The context for new listeners, of course, to this is that Sean nominated the overturning of Roe v. Wade as the biggest story, the most remarkable story when it happened. And Adam ruled against it and said, like, house prices or something was the biggest story of the week.
Well, it was a draft judgment. It wasn't the real one. I still got
Adam,
it wrong.
I just don't think I'd try and justify that debacle.
I just love how long Sean can hold on to something for.
Not really.
Oh, there's plenty of life in this one.
Most remarkable story.
Michael, I think you should go first.
Okay. Well, most remarkable story for me is a quick one this week.
Oh, really?
It is. Victoria per brevitatem, the most remarkable story in a week full of somewhat unremarkable stories on occasion was the remarkable. It's been one of those weeks, right, where you get a story like US politics, and it does tend to kind of suck the oxygen out of a lot of other stuff. Like everyone's suddenly talking about that, and really, but then you know what? Then this was a gift. It was a little gift in the form
a change in direction.
A little gift in the form of the Reserve Bank board minutes, right? And what was remarkable?
It was a little gift.
What was remarkable was the remarkable insight that we received into what the Reserve Bank board is thinking right now and just how likely it is that we will see potentially an interest rate hike as soon as August, because these minutes showed, and it was quite a shock, I think, for many to see just how serious they are about hiking rates if needed. And one quote in particular stood out, and of course, Sean, you shared this through the week, and I wrote it down, and I thought I should put this on my wall because it is that profound. The quote was, members acknowledged if inflation expectations were to rise materially from current levels, it could require significantly higher interest rates to bring inflation back to target. Does this sound to you like a group of people who are not serious about raising rates? It most certainly does not. What we have here is a central bank very, very concerned about embedding higher price expectations. And anyone wanting to know how this works, how inflation expectations can create that spiral of higher wages and higher prices, should listen to our bonus episode of Ask Fear and Greed from Thursday. And Sean, you do a very good job of going through all of that and explaining all of that. The bottom line, though, is that the RBA's forecast for inflation to return to the midpoint of the target band by mid-2026 is at risk. The inflation numbers this month, of course, will be absolutely vital to this. But isn't it just remarkable? And I'm looking around the studio. Everyone is nodding in agreement here that the Reserve Bank is absolutely primed to act. They are at DEFCON 3 right now. And those minutes this week revealed just how serious they are about the potential to increase rates should the need arise. There you go.
So it reminds me of a story, which my mother, when she was listening to the show, this is probably 6 months ago, rang me and said, "Your voice sounds terrible." And Mum's 93 or almost 93, and technology sometimes sort of beats her. Anyway, my sister happened to be there and said to Mum, "You know that you're listening at double speed 2 times." And Mum said, "Oh, no, darling, I didn't know that." And anyway, she then apologised and said, "Well, your voice sounded quite nice when you're on normal speed." When you were doing that story then, Michael, it kind of reminded me of what double speed is like. But you weren't at double speed. You were at single speed.
No, I'm at passion speed, Sean. Oh, hello.
I don't bring that up with my mother. Come on. It's single speed, please.
Goodness me. It is a ferocious, efficient speed. Now, Sean.
My most remarkable story. I'm not sure what yours is. So yours is the Reserve Bank board minutes that came out this week? Is that what it was?
Absolutely.
Well, my most remarkable story, which emerged this week, is how much the big banks dominate the ASX 200 and what that means for investors. And they're getting even bigger, with the Treasurer Jim Chalmers agreeing to let ANZ buy Suncorp's banking business. At the end of the financial year, a year where the market returned 8%, led by the tech stocks, and the median superannuation growth fund is forecast to return 9%. It's my third story in this one story so far. The financials index on the bourse now represents 31.5% of the total market capitalisation. it creates a massive challenge for anyone investing in the ASX 200 because it's now overly reliant on financials, and most of the financials index is made up of the big four banks. If the banks have a bad year, and many think they will because of current relatively high valuations, then the market will struggle to outperform. Compare it, so the next biggest sector is materials, which includes the big three miners. It's got about 21%, much more diverse bunch of companies. They don't rely just on the big three miners like the financial index relies on the big three banks. Tech sector, we talk about that, best performing sector last financial year, only accounts for 3.1% of the ASX 200. The point is, if you're a passive investor in the ASX 200, your fortunes are going to be tied, in part, to the big four banks. If you're an active investor, you need to be more wary than ever before of not holding the banks or of holding too many of the banks because, again, your fortunes are very much tied to the fact that we have these monsters in the market. There is a recent precedent for this. In the last few years, US tech stocks and Wall Street, the big seven, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, Amazon, Apple, Meta, and Google, have contributed well over half the performance of the S&P 500. So if you didn't hold tech stocks like Nvidia, which reminds me, this is story number 7, which reminds me that Australian super underperformed last financial year because it didn't, at least for a while, when you were hold Nvidia, therefore struggling to beat the market. The fact that if you didn't hold tech stocks last year, you didn't beat the market in the US, similar sort of deal in Australia. Very, very tricky for investors.
Do you get a sense of deja vu at all, Adam? Like, doesn't it just feel to you like a very similar story might have been the most remarkable story on, just pulling a random date, Saturday the 8th of June as well, not having just gone back and checked the records. Look, you know what, Sean? If I didn't know better, I would accuse you of a bit of copying and pasting.
I got the material sector in there. I got the tech stocks in there. I got the superannuation returns in. I got every possible thing July 1 into that story except for house prices, which you lost on.
Essentially, you diversified your portfolio, didn't you?
That's right. Extremely sensible.
So Sean's analysis is really good and important. And so I enjoyed the newsletter. I've enjoyed listening to it. And it is staggering that banks dominate so much, nearly a third of the whole ASX 200. That's amazing. And it is, as you've described, Sean, a risk. It is an evolving story. And Michael, the minutes came out, the meetings happened a little while ago. So this too is an evolving story.
I think we're both going to get done here, Michael.
It feels like he's going to kick us out. Yeah. Like I found two new people to do the show.
So, but look, the as you said, Michael, the significantly higher rates risk is significant. So, I think I have to call it a draw on this one. Both remarkable evolutions of stories. But can I give you a quick anecdote? I got distracted when Michael used the DEFCON system, and so I'm going to reveal a little bit of my working past here. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So Today FM, 15 years ago, Carl Sandilands, Jackie O were on the breakfast show, and I worked with a colleague. I won't name them because I haven't sought permission, but they described the situation as this. When Kyle and Jackie O come on air, it's like the DEFCON system is in place, Adam, this person said to me. So before, the midnight to dawn shift, you've got normal readiness, DEFCON 5. The moment you get close to 5 o'clock, DEFCON 4, you've got to be above normal readiness. And then when it gets close, like to 5:45, Kyle's going to come in and Jackie O's going to come in and they're going to get ready. That's 3. You've got to have your Air Force ready. And then when they go on air, you are immediately at DEFCON 2. You've got to have everything ready. And the equivalent is having the armed forces ready to deploy in less than 6 hours.
Oh, my God.
And
that
so
is
just that
extraordinary.
DEFCON story, when you mentioned DEFCON, I was like, oh, my God, it takes me back to that high state of alert we had to have.
Oh, extraordinary.
Must have been very difficult to work with people like that. And I'm not talking them as individuals, but just always on edge that something's going to go to where that shouldn't go to where.
Well, live radio is always like that. But when you have personalities like Kyle and Jackie O, and their content was so sharp, in many cases it caused very divided opinions. So that state of alert was just so high.
Fascinating. Victoria per brevitatem.
I'd almost award the most remarkable story to Adam.
Yep.
I thought that was more interesting than either of ours.
1-0-1.
How about this? I'm actually being beaten by the judge at the moment.
You've been beaten by ASIC. You'll be beaten by the judge.
Goodness me. I've got to hold out hope for the swimsuit category. All right, we will take a break. Come back with a sleeper story in a moment. All right, Sean, we're looking for a sleeper story. A sleeper story is, of course, one that's not getting the attention that it deserves, that we feel it deserves. That's quite subjective. Flying under the radar a little bit, usually kind of involving kind of probably small companies that no one's really heard of that don't make much impact globally or anything like that.
What are you talking about? It's got nothing to do with it whatsoever.
What's your sleeper story, Sean?
Exactly. So there were reports this week that two separate companies, Saudi's Aramco and Abu Dhabi National Oil Co., are considering bidding for Santos, the local oil and gas giant. Now, they're both state-owned, Aramco and ADNOC. Abu Dhabi National Oil Co. is known as ADNOC. So Aramco and ADNOC, they've been conducting preliminary evaluations of Santos as a possible acquisition target, according to Bloomberg. That's not the sleeper part here, right? Santos basically came out and said it doesn't comment on market speculation, obviously not particularly close to a deal or anything like that. The news surprised some analysts because the deal would have to go through all sorts of regulatory hurdles, particularly Foreign Investment Review Board hurdles, whether we want people from the Middle East owning our assets, who knows. Where it is really interesting, though, and this is the sleeper part, is that it just shows how much movement there is in the oil and gas world, how much M&A activity we can expect, and Woodside, Santos, Beach Energy, these guys in Australia are going to be part of it. LNG really and gas are the big prizes in all this. In Santos's case, it's got projects in Australia, in Papua New Guinea, in Timor-Leste. It's also got assets in Alaska, but they're oil. Even the fact that the deal's probably unlikely, but it just does show that oil and gas the world of oil and gas is going to change forever. Gas is in huge demand. And it's because everyone has suddenly realised it is the transition industry. We can't close gas down because we need it to transition to renewables. For much of the last year, Santos and Woodside held merger talks, which would have created an $80 billion company. EIG, a US-based private equity group, made a $14.4 billion bid for Santos a few years back. It's all about gas. Gulf countries are investing huge amounts in it, and the Australian oil and gas guys are going to be part of this global consolidation. So I reckon there's going to be a lot of activity for investors in that world. I'm not saying good or bad, because I have no idea. But I think we're going to, for the rest of this year, be talking a lot about M&A stuff around gas companies. My sleeper story, all very serious. Michael, over to you. Something brief would be nice.
Something brief is what I've got for you, Sean. It's going to sound a little bit strange, I suspect, because I'm going to be putting the big tech companies in the sleeper category.
Oh, who are they?
I know it hasn't worked for you, Sean, on many occasions, trying to claim that tech stories are remarkable or the biggest of the week or any of that, but this is different, Adam. Because what I've noticed this week is a trend, right?
In a week. Go on.
Yes, because you see one story in isolation and it doesn't look like much. But join them together, as I've done, and suddenly they weave together into a rich sleeper tapestry. And what this tapestry does is show quite clearly that the tech platforms are actually under a little bit of pressure, not necessarily from investors, but under pressure on a variety of different fronts. Example number one. Meta, owner of Instagram and Facebook, has now threatened to block news from its platforms in Australia and stop local users, that's you and me, from sharing links to news articles if the government decides to force them to negotiate payments with news organisations. This is a big escalation. This is that's DEFCON 1. And it isn't without precedent. It's already blocked news in Canada. Example number two.
Can you have a big escalation being DEFCON 1?
No, they're at DEFCON 2 at the moment, and they're threatening to go to DEFCON 1. Anyway, brevitatem, please, Sean. Example number two. Google, likely to face increased competition for search services on Android devices because Telstra and Optus have told the ACCC that they won't do a deal with Google to force users onto the platform. So on mobile devices, Google Search's market share in Australia is around 98%. That based on this decision, this promise made by Telstra and Optus, that may be changing.
Hold on. I'm going to correct you here. The competition watchdog forced them to do it. It wasn't Telstra and Optus being nice guys. It was the ACCC discovering that it was happening, saying, can't do that.
Yeah, it's an undertaking. They have agreed.
No, I look, a good, important part of your story, but let's not give too much credit to the telcos on this one.
That's fine.
Yep,
I'm happy to agree with you on that one, Sean. Example number 3. Now, this is a big one, short one, but a big one. Google's greenhouse gas emissions have surged 48% in the past 5 years, and it's all because of this massive increase in demand, of course, for data centers as AI grows and grows and grows. What this means is that Google's commitment to get to net zero by 2030 is now actually in doubt. And I don't think there'll be too many people, investors or anyone really, will be too happy about that. There were other examples as well I could give you, but victory through brevity and all that, I won't go into them. What we are seeing here, if we just take a step back, zoom out a little bit, gaze upon the tapestry that I've woven cleverly for you today, is an unusual sight of the tech giants under pressure fighting a million little battles on a million different fronts. You put it all together, and I think we're seeing a trend here, and that trend is the ultimate sleeper story. Oh, goodness me. Well done, Michael.
Adam.
Well, I'm redundant in this process.
That's right.
Look, I find myself in something of a surprise, but Michael wins.
Oh, my God. You know this isn't reflecting well on you, Adam.
I know that's a risk. I do.
Well, my favourite part of this is now it's 1-1, 1-1-1 with the judge. This is glorious.
Look, Sean, your story is massive, right? The sleeper, and not just so much about Santos, as you said, but about the whole principle of the recognition about liquefied natural gas and gas being, really required energy sources. They are. I think there's some people that'll be a surprise to. I think you're absolutely right that there's more in that story. So it's a ripper. But in this instance, the big one that tipped the scales for me was not just the news bargaining code or how international companies don't pay much tax here, but also the Google requirement in the way they're working with Telstra and Optus. That is very significant. But the biggest one that has been growing in a sleeper sense is this massive consumption of energy on AI. And so I think that
we didn't know about that, did we?
Well, not that volume. I didn't know.
You haven't been reading the right stuff.
I didn't
you
know
haven't been
the
listening to the right podcast.
I didn't know until this news came out that the scale of energy consumption is so big and it's going to blow their emissions targets. Now, that for Google is really, really important. And just how pervasive Google is means it's important for us. So I think it's a really big sleeper story.
Now, can I make a suggestion? So we're 1-1-1. It's a tie.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? We all give our favourite story for the week.
Okay.
All right.
Let's take Adam out of the judging process.
I'm in.
So, Adam, come up with a story.
Yep.
I'll come up with a story. Michael, you come up with a story. And perhaps readers or God, I don't mind, or me, can decide.
Cool.
Oh, no, that's not fair.
Michael and I can be judged, not Adam. I'm happy to go with you, Michael.
Oh, no. It was only because mine has a personal link for Adam that I was kind of counting on. Anyway, shall I go first and give you both a moment to think about your stories?
Yes.
Okie dokie.
The favourite story, I think, it's an easy one for anyone who loves politics, who loves a bit of drama, even on the other side of the world. And if you happen to be married to someone who hails from the UK, Adam, then I suspect, I don't know.
You know it is not speculation.
The UK election was held late this week, and an extraordinary landslide win to the Labor Party with a new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. It's a pretty incredible result for Labor when you think about it, because just 5 years ago, the landslide went the other way with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, actually significantly growing the Conservative government's majority. What I find fascinating here is how the Labor Party ran with a campaign slogan of just one word: change. And it's kind of vague, doesn't really tell you what policies will be changing, but banked entirely on voter dissatisfaction, really. After 14 years of Conservative government, a revolving door of 5 prime ministers, including the sub-50-day term of Liz Truss and the Partygate scandals of Boris Johnson, the new Prime Minister has done a lot to project stability, particularly over the last few years, but really during the election campaign as well. He's brought the party towards the centre, away from the extreme left of Jeremy Corbyn, and in doing so has won a lot of support from business as well, and even the media. Adding to the whole stability image is the fact that Sir Keir Starmer's biggest controversy, as is identified in a lot of media outlets, when they do a comparison between the two kind of candidates, his controversy is that he's boring. That is what they consider to be controversial. His nickname is No Drama Starmer. Boris Johnson once called him Captain Crasheroony Snoozefest, which is just extraordinary, isn't it? But the thing is, though, he's actually had a pretty incredible career, recognised with a knighthood awarded to him for services to law and criminal justice. Another fascinating tidbit is that he has 2 kids who are 13 and 16, but he's never identified them in public. He's kept their names out of the media. He's kept them out of photos to try and make their lives as normal as possible. Now, these aren't kind of 1 and 2 year olds who just kind of keep them at home. These are 13, 16 year olds that are kind of going through high school and all of this, and still he's managed to keep them pretty much entirely anonymous. I think that is amazing. It's going to be rather tough at number 10, you would imagine. Of course, Adam, I don't even know why I'm pointing this out to you because you're not judging us anymore, but the UK election has flow-on effects to Australia. So this is all just the add-on stuff at the end, the fluff to try and kind of tick some of those boxes on your judging criteria. But through the AUKUS Treaty, the many other trade and diplomatic links that we have, but just for the fact that there's a new Prime Minister in a landslide, I love the theatre of it all. It's my favourite story of the week.
And brevity is everything. What was that phrase you were using?
I don't remember. It's not really relevant anymore, is it?
Victoria per brevitatem.
Yeah,
yep, that's right.
So. Have you finished?
I'm done. I was done like a good 8 seconds ago, Sean.
My favourite story. How can anyone not be happy about this next story? How can anyone not have it as their favourite story? July 1 came and all these financially beneficial changes kicked in. Firstly, everyone can expect more money in their pay packet as a result of stage 3 tax cuts, worth about $330 billion over the next decade. No tax anymore if you earn up to $18,200. A 16% rate then kicks in. That's between $18,200 and $45,000. After $45,000, you hit 30% up to $135,000, then 37% up to $190,000, and then you too, 45% after that. There's also an increase in the minimum wage that affects 2.6 million Australian workers. Goes from $23.23 to $24.10 an hour. You'd have to be a Scrooge not to be happy about that one. There's changes to paid parental leave. There's also a $75 energy rebate each quarter. That kicks in this financial year. There's indexation of welfare payments. Superannuation guarantee will rise from 11 to 11.5%, ensuring more money for everyone when they retire. We don't get these stories very often. How can it not be your favourite story? That's what I ask. However, having said that, I respect the fact that Adam is going to give his favourite story, which will be interesting because he's the judge, and Michael and I will then decide who wins and who loses. Adam?
Amazing.
Okay. So I'm going to choose an unorthodox topic, well, humour, let's say, as my nomination for favourite story of the week. So the UK election. I'm not sure if either of you have heard of Jonathan Pye. Have either of you heard of him?
I don't know. Adam, Michael, stop Googling. Stop Googling.
No, I was Googling something else.
Okay.
I was looking at something else.
He runs a YouTube channel, which is very successful. It's very, very funny. He says he's a UK news reporter, brutally honest views on the world of politics. But he just tears into politicians every single week. And so what he's done this week, and it was yesterday's election special number 5, it's nearly 6 minutes long. But if you want to watch something just incredibly powerful and funny, have a watch of it. And to me, just the lack of humour that we see in the US election versus something like Jonathan Pye, which basically I think keeps Britain sane, it is just such a brilliant story.
So can we just bring back to the categories that you judge us on here, Adam?
Yes.
So just tell us what they are again.
Topicality, timeliness,
economic
impact.
Ooh.
subjective bias
Yeah.
and melodrama. Not my strong suit, melodrama.
So, Michael, it looks like you and I won 1.5 to 1.
There we go. What a fantastic three-way battle.
Battle. That's right. An excellent three-way 1.5, 1.5, 1. This does remind me a little of a story of Michael's. Michael is an excellent whistler.
Yes, he is.
And it's a skill. And I do remember you telling us the story in the early days when I didn't know you well. You used to work for the Ray Hadley morning show in Sydney. And Ray, at some point, suggested to you, Michael, you are such a good whistler, come in and whistle a tune as part of the show. And you were very excited. You were young. You were going to be on Ray Hadley, which is for, about 40 years. It's been the number one rated morning show. Maybe not 40 years, but, 20 years anyway. You get your big break. And so
this is my chance.
So you get there, you're ready to go. Ray said, we've got our producer, Michael Thompson. He's going to give us a tune. You whistled beautifully. Magnificent. Can't remember what it was you whistled. What was it?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
You whistled it beautifully. You finished. And please take it from there.
Oh, I whistled beautifully for about 8 seconds. And all of a sudden I just started like something went wrong. And I had to stop. And I said, I've gone dry, Ray. And he said, right, we'll go to a break. And we went to a commercial break. I was removed from the studio and I never whistled on air again.
Oh.
It was one of those times where you have a chance to show what you can do, and you just don't quite nail it. And is this why you were telling this story, Sean? Because this is what Adam just did?
Yep.
Oh,
didn't quite nail it.
Oh, savage. Oh, what a way to finish the show. 1.5 to 1.5 to 1. With an epic slapdown from Sean to Adam. Remember that, Adam, and let it fuel your rage and your judgments next week. Adam, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great weekend.